It's time for Talkward, Cringeworthy Tales. And now, your host, weekly humorist, editor-in-chief, Marty Dundix.
Hi, and welcome to Talkward. I'm Marty Dundix, editor-in-chief of Weekly Humorist Magazine, and this is Talkward, a fun little podcast where professionally funny people come to tell awkward and cringeworthy stories. I'm very excited about today's guest. He is a hilarious comedy writer who is very prolific on the online humor circuit. He has a bajillion things up on McSweeney's that get a bajillion clicks every day. I'm lucky enough to be talking to him about his new book today, Greg Maxwell's Inferno, which is published by Humorist Books. He's joining us today via satellite from San Diego. Please welcome Keith James. Hey, Keith, how are you? Welcome to Talkward.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy to really, my whole life is somewhat cringeworthy, so.
Is it?
You know. Yeah.
Well, I want to hear about it. I want to hear some cringeworthy stories from you in your journey. Your journey as a creator, as a comedy creator, as a writer, as a performer.
I'd love to. I mean, I'm an improv, comic person. So that all together is just cringeworthy. Just like that as your
yes and
is
that
the whole
yes the thing?
Already sending shivers up the audience's spine.
I'll take a suggestion from the audience.
Goat
herding?
Well,
did I hear goat herding?
If you just want like a cringeworthy story right out of the gate.
Yes, please.
Okay, I could talk about a paid experience in Palm Springs doing improv for a pseudo health company that basically the FBI raided 2 months later. And so we were out there. We got told hey, we'll pay you $200 or whatever, and you just go up there and you do some short form games, and then try to do long form, even though that'll freak them out. And we were like, hey, how long is it supposed to be? And they said 3 hours. Now, if you've ever seen an improv show, you're like, hey, 22 minutes is enough.
More than enough.
But they're like, hey, what if we tacked on a solid 2 hours and 40 on top of that?
Wow.
And so we get up there, and the person that is, who's running this health company is, I swear there's going to be an HBO documentary about her. She was just a complete lunatic. But she goes up to us and she refuses to make eye contact. And she goes to our theater director and is like, my son, does breakdance fighting, and I would like him to participate. And the person that was running this theater is just a money hungry wolf. So she was like, yeah, absolutely. We will roll in your breakdance. Keith will fight him. Because I was known as a very physical performer or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to fight the CEO's son who came on the script. And so we're going through these games, and it's this gigantic banquet hall, and it's this tiny stage, and people in the back can't see us, and they also weren't told there was going to be an improv show.
What everyone always loves is not only going to an improv show, but being forced into a surprise situation where you weren't expecting an improv show.
Right. Imagine being at a party and someone being like, hey, we forgot to inform you, this is now Catholic Mass. And you're just like, oh, shit. So they were like, oh, fuck. And they're like, how long? 3 hours? Oh, absolutely not. So people are just eating dinner and talking and, of course, just not paying attention, which improvisers, we can handle that because whatever, no one's watching.
That's like being at a wedding reception, but instead of a band or a DJ playing music as background music at a wedding, they decided to have an improv comedy show in the background of an event.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's hey, your best man speech, hey, I hope it's really good. Hey, can you stretch your 2 minutes to 3 hours? Is there any way can you stretch that? So.
And add some breakdance fighting?
Yeah, can you also incorporate my son? So we're sitting there and we're doing this stuff, and of course, like, it's just bombing. But then I see, like, the CEO being like, going, like, getting her son and being like, son goes on there now. And so my theater director is looking at me like I'm her son, being like, you go on stage now too. Like, you go fight him. And I'm like, I don't want to, like, I have no interest. And so I'm doing, like, comedy fighting, and this kid kicks me in the hip so hard. And I was like, oh my God. So, like, I'm actually just going to be in a fight.
Oh, this is real. I thought we were playing. Now I'm in a fight to the death.
Yeah, I thought, like, oh, like, this is a bit or whatever, and, like, this is just going to be, like, a theatrical performance. But it was like, no, we're just going to watch, like,
Gladiator. You're now Gladiator.
This guy just beat up this, like,
you're Hunger Gaming's
like, lumpy comedian in, like, a flannel shirt and is, like, permanently hungover. So, like, I'm sitting there getting, like, fought by this guy, but I'm trying to make it a joke, and people are laughing. And then the CEO comes up and is like, stop. And so we go to the next round, and she pulls me aside, and she's like, you embarrassed my son. And I was like, how? And she's like, you didn't take it seriously. And I was like, who do you want to do this?
Do you want me to hurt your son, or do you want me to hurt his feelings? Like, you know, like, there's two options here.
Right, exactly. Like, what should my role be in this? And so then she's like, you have to go back on there. You have to do it again. You have to make it right. I was like, he gets an encore? Like, the fuck out of here. And so I finally, like, I go on stage, and I don't even know how to make him feel good, so I bow. And I'm like, I don't even know. Like, it's like, it feels like inappropriate. And then he, like, kicks me again, and I pretend to die. And I'm like, you win. And, like, the audience is like, oh boy, like, Cheryl's son just beat up another performer. And so then we get on to the short form.
Like, you should have been at the puppet show last week when Cheryl's son kicked that kid's ass.
Yeah, they're like, well, this is actually the only, actually entertaining thing. So then we actually get to the long form, and our mics stopped working.
Do they stop working, or someone turned them off?
I hope in my heart of hearts that there was a person that just came over and was like, I'm gonna mercy kill them. But again, like, my, like, ravenous theater owner was like, we're getting our money. So she was like, keep going. And they handed us one microphone, like, one just, like, microphone that you give to a person. And she was like, just say a line and then, like, give the mic to the other person and maybe they'll say a line or whatever. And I was like, this is going to go perfectly. And so, like, you're, like, initiating a scene and being like, well, got some news from the doctor. And they're like, and you're just like, okay, well, here we go. Yeah, and so we just did that. And then, like, for, like, group scenes, it was just like, you're sitting up there. What I didn't know is that in the audience was my high school girlfriend who worked for this company. And so I get off stage.
This story has got layers.
Oh, it was honestly, it was a point in my life where I was like, do I go to law school? Is this how people end up going to law school? Is like, they just get absolutely embarrassed by something and they're like, I need to be called a lawyer.
But wait, it gets worse.
Yeah, no. So, like, we wrap up our 3 hours and I see her and I'm like, oh my gosh. And she immediately comes up to me and she's like, I know this is embarrassing for you. And I was like, oh wait, the show went that bad. There was no, like, hey, good to see that you're performing and stuff like that.
That was something? That was a thing you did? Okay.
You're having fun up there? And, like, those people seem like, no. She was like, this is a bad moment for you. And I was like, it is. I was like, but did you know that your CEO is, like, a nut? And she was like, it doesn't matter because, like, a 14-year-old kicked you and, like, beat you up twice.
In front of an audience that included your high school girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's my improv.
This sounds
story.
like a bad dream that you had
Oh,
that you woke up from and you were happy it wasn't real.
Oh no, I've done one of one paid improv gigs. That was the one, and I said
That was it. You only did one.
It. No, they had this whole corporate section of this improv theater, and I was like, okay, I'll do it, whatever. She was like, yeah, you know how to like do some other stuff. I did for free. I did a like bullying.
Anti-bullying. Was it anti-bullying or was it pro-bullying?
No, it was pro-bullying. Yeah, no, it was pro-bullying.
You were teaching bullies how to hit little kids.
Hey, listen. Yeah, like, look.
You had to punch down. You had to punch down
as
hard.
Someone who's been a victim of bullying, I can tell you what works. No, I did this like anti-bullying thing for like kindergartners. I did that for free, and it was
that's good. Or did you do it for someone's lunch money?
Yeah, yeah. We like just shook down a kid, and we were like, that's a payment enough. But we did that, and that went poorly because I had this friend, and he kept, because we were doing improv again, and he kept making fun of me for my lunch, and he'd be like, oh man, you have the grossest lunches, and I'd be like, oh, like, well, it's just like, it's ice and celery in a hot dog bun. And like, he couldn't stop laughing and I couldn't stop laughing. And so like the person that was like running this like very serious bullying campaign and will do like statistics of like X amount of kids died because of bullying or whatever, she would be like, okay, so I think we strayed away. It seems like the hot dog celery ice cube sandwich has come back again. Let's try and stay on what we're trying. And so she was like, hey, I think you guys also did a very bad job with that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I didn't know how to talk to kids. I didn't know what kids get, But, because she told us, she was like, you guys can't be, like, if you're going to play the bully, you can't be too good of a bully. You have to be, like, mean. You can't teach them you can't give them content.
You can't give them ideas.
Like, all the bullies sitting there being like, that one is a good line.
It's a good one. I'm going to do that one tomorrow.
Hey, could you say that one again?
Yeah, could you back up? I didn't get that whole thing.
Replay the scene. Yeah, no. So that was that's the whole improv stuff.
So that was your entire improv comedy career was just kind of that experience.
Was that experience?
Where did you train? Did you train at is there a Second City or a UCB?
I did some stuff at UCB. I mainly trained at the Pack Theater in LA. Under like Emily Candini and
so you were in Los Angeles before in San Diego.
I kind of split. Oh yeah, well I was in Los Angeles, but then I grew up in San Diego.
Okay.
So I did training up in LA. But this theater that I worked at was a San Diego theater.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's kind of how I.
How was the LA comedy scene? How long did you do that?
For a while. I mean, I was there, like years. But did that, and it's. I mean, improv is such a. It's strange. It's such a strange.
When I would hang out in LA for the LA comedy scene, when I was doing work, I would go to LA for work. I'm based in New York, but I would have to go to LA for maybe a couple of weeks a year. And I was mostly on Sunset, West Hollywood, near the Improv, near the Comedy Store, near the Laugh Factory. And then I would go to the UCB theater that was next to the Ralph's grocery store. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I saw the comedy for UCB. And that was a great theater, and I had a lot of fun there. Is that kind of the area that you were in? Because then they opened up another one that I'd never really been to, and then I think they closed one of them. Yeah, I never went to the Second City there, or the Groundlings.
The IO West one was just right on the Hollywood Boulevard, and then there was the Pack, which I believe was on. I'm trying to think right now. I think it was on Melrose. It like took over like the Acme building.
Okay.
And I remember we used to do training over there, and there was a it was on the second story, and it was like there was this homeless guy who like used to like sleep like right over there, and he would yell like after scenes, and he would be like, "That sucked."
Instant feedback.
Yeah.
You knew exactly.
Yeah.
It was like an automatic meter. Someone was like, dislike.
Yeah. And, oh yeah, absolutely. And there was like one scene where it was like very raunchy.
Did he ever like it?
He would go. He would do something where he'd be like, "Fine," and you'd be like, "All right, I think
I'll take that."
He can't say anything mean,
Yeah,
right? And growing up in like an Irish family, like "fine" and "I don't care" are like yeses.
Yeah.
Those are like good. You're fine.
Yeah. You've skated.
Yeah, you're clear. And so, but there was one where it was just like this like just vulgar scene, and you pause, and like our teacher got to the point where she was good at like waiting for him, and there was this long pause, and he just says, "I'll fuck both of you." And our teacher being like, "Okay, well, we're not gonna do like a smoke break today. We're not gonna. I don't know what he wants to do with that."
He's in a good mood. He's in a giving mood today.
Yeah. He's ready to participate.
He was open.
Yeah.
You've warmed him up. He's warmed up to the crowd.
Oh,
Receptive.
Yeah, so
he's receptive today.
Man.
Hey, I'll fuck both of you is a lot better than I'm going to kill both of you.
Right.
Right. In the grand scheme.
I mean, if you're taking what you can get, if you're at that point in life.
Right. And at least he was sort of asking you. He wasn't saying, "I'm going to force this upon you." He was saying, "Hey, you know what?
I'm throwing it out there.
Just so you know, I would fuck both of you."
Hey.
So that's kind of a compliment if you look at it in that way.
That's almost better than fine.
Yeah. Oh, that is better than fine. If someone said fine to me, I'm like, okay. If someone said I'd fuck both of you to me, I'd be like, that actually kind of made my day. Walking by New York City, if someone kind of yelled that to me, I'd be like, that's a lot better than when I usually get yelled at,
Oh, yeah. I mean, that changes the memory for me. I have one New York improv world thing. I did the Del Close Marathon.
Okay. That's a big deal here. That was a big deal here. People would go crazy for that here.
Yeah, I did that, and with a duo, and we get there, and everything's all good, and they're like, "Hey, so one of you, so this is like a one-person team," and they were like, "No, it's two," and they're like, "Well, we only have one, so like, you can't perform." And it was me. I was the guy who couldn't perform, and I was like, "Well, should I just like go back to California then?" And the person, of course, is like a volunteer, like improviser, and he was like, "I don't fucking care." He's like, "I don't care what you like." And I was like, "Can I get like a wristband or something?"
Why wouldn't they let you perform on a stage for two people?
Exactly. It was the dumbest thing, because I was just like, well, it says in the description this is a duo, so like, let's context clues. You're saying there's one performer, but it says it's a duo, and I'm the guy who's saying it's the second guy. So like, what do you think we should do here? And he's like, "I think you should not perform." And I was like, that's not the answer. And so we were sitting there, and we were like, like Del Close Marathon, that gets crazy. I'll just walk off stage. And so, I mean, that's what we did. But leading up to it, we were, of course, like every time I go to New York City, I just like immediately get like sick, like 103-degree fever. And so I'm like sweating through this thing, and we look at the time, and we're like, "Oh, we got like a prime time spot."
Yeah.
Like an absolute prime time spot. We're like and like, look at all these other places, like all these other theaters, like who we're with. This is so great. So we get there, and we realize that like it's not actually. You wouldn't consider it a primetime spot, because all the other theaters had like big heavy hitters. Like this is when like ASCAT was performing, or like Mantzoukas was doing whatever, like at every other theater.
Jason Mantzoukas is so funny.
Oh,
the one time I did go to the UCB theater by the Ralphs, and I had a friend who was a UCB New York guy, and he had moved to LA, and now he was a LA UCB guy, and I was just seeing him to say hello, and we went to the UCB show, and it was like Paul Scheer's show, and it was all of these famous people who were just doing stuff at UCB, but my friend was like best friends with them, but I didn't really know that. So I was like walking in, and it was like, oh, here's my friend Jason, and it was Jason Mantzoukas, and it was Paul Scheer. It was like all these people, and I was just like, hi guys. But because I was with my friend Eli, it was just like I was cool. So I got to be the fly on the wall of like the top UCB famous people at that time, and it was they're so nice.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, improvisers for the most part, it's either they're like very, very nice people, like too nice, or awful. Yeah. Like awful, like Machiavellian type people. But yeah, so we sat there and we realized pretty quickly, like, not going to be a problem to sneak in this show. We're the only ones at this theater. And so we go, and this theater is not a theater. It's basically like a space, this gigantic space that they just like said, hey, this is one of the theaters for this show.
We've put out chairs, so now it's the theater.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every other improv setup where it's like, hey, do you want to like perform at this bus stop between 9:15 and 9:45 in the morning?
That's what they do. I mean, for improv, but for stand-up comedy in New York, I mean, they'll do stand-up comedy anywhere. You'll do stand-up comedy. If you can put a microphone in it, people do stand-up comedies in laundromats, barbershops, literally at bus stops, in the park, in the subway station. Like, no one cares. As long as there's a microphone, a person will do comedy.
And the slogan for improv should be, we don't even need the microphone.
Yeah, we don't need the microphone. It's better if we don't have it. Or you could just pass it around to one person at a time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, man, that was... You get what you wish for when you're like, oh, man, we just have microphones. And then it's like, sure, we'll give you one.
So you learned about comedy doing improv. And then you kind of transitioned into doing a lot more writing?
I was always writing. I really started doing it more. I was at Syracuse for like a hot minute.
I went to Syracuse.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Syracuse for a very little bit, but then...
Why would you go to Syracuse in upstate New York? It is one of the coldest places to ever be anywhere in the United States. From Southern California. I always was very surprised by people who lived in warm weather climates who came to Syracuse ever.
Oh, man, I know.
What a mistake you've made.
I only saw one person from San Diego in my time there, but I was there for a very short amount of time. But I went there because I was like, I need to get away from every single person in the world. That's the farthest from San Diego. Yeah. Let's do it. And so I was doing a lot of writing up there. And then I started kind of working with this guy who was an animator in LA. And he really liked a lot of my stuff. And we just kind of were going back and forth. And he was kind of like, hey, you should really work on like script writing and things and like that, and scenes and sketches and all this other stuff. And then he like bought my first website to just be like, all right, go do what you want to do and like write and stuff like that. Then I kind of like put down the pen for a bit when I was back in San Diego, and I eventually went to college at the Brigham Young University.
Really?
Yeah.
You went to Brigham Young?
I probably need like 4 podcasts for this, because I went to Brigham Young University because, my family at the time had like no money. Dad was in prison, and I was just like, dude, I want to go to college or whatever. And I was dating this girl, and she was like, hey, I'm going up to college or whatever. BYU, and I was like, oh,
so
cool.
You followed a girl to college.
Pretty much. And so I was like, oh, well, let me check like the tuition of this school. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the cheapest school ever. I can't believe this is like,
is it?
I can't believe this is, BYU was like, at the time, like if you were a non-LDS person, it's like $3,000 a semester. But then if you're a Mormon person, it was like $1,400 a semester. And then if you had like a certain GPA, like if you had a 4.0, it was free. So at the time I had really good grades, so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to BYU.
So did you become Mormon to go to college for free?
Yeah. So yeah,
that's a great idea.
Oh my god, it was honestly, and there's like a little brief bit of it in my book where I talk about like Mormons and stuff like that.
This is a realistic version of the movie Soul Man.
I've never seen Soul Man.
The movie Soul Man would never fly today, but it was a guy who pretends to be a black guy to get into a college on a diversity scholarship. This was a very popular movie in the 80s, and this movie is never going to rerun on Comedy Central. Ever.
Yeah.
Like,
this is like an ecclesiastical version of that.
But
so
your version is the okay version of a story like that. And I think that would be a very interesting update to Soul Man if it was you pretending to be Mormon to go to a college for free and then you having to pretend to believe all of these things. So how did that work out for you?
It was bad. I got kicked out. Yeah, I got kicked out.
You got kicked out of BYU for not being Mormon?
No, I got kicked out for not like an honor code violation, right?
Ooh. What was the honor code? What were you doing?
Well, so like,
you were having premarital sex with the girl that you chased into college.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So and also like drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like no coffee, no tea, no drinking, sex, like smoking, drugs, anything like that. But
no fun of any kind.
I mean, like you can't even wear shorts. Can't wear
shorts.
Really?
You can't show your knees.
Can't show them knees. Yeah, and you can't wear flip flops.
You can't wear flip flops.
Can't wear flip flops. Can't have facial hair unless it's a mustache, which, it's not like kept it. It's my souvenir from BYU.
Did you grow that at BYU?
No, I thought at that time I was like, a mustache? Like, why would you let a person have one? Like, you're just going to let people walk around with mustaches, but we can't wear shorts? I was like, what? Like, where are our priorities? Like that.
How long did you last at BYU?
I was there for about 2 years.
Okay, so you gave it a good shot.
Oh, I gave it the good college try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did those credits transfer someplace else?
They did.
Okay.
I graduated at the Idaho State University in Pocatello, Idaho.
Such an interesting guy.
I mean,
isn't there a very cheap or easy to get into college in San Diego?
No,
there isn't.
San Diego State is stupid expensive, like very expensive. And then UCS
isn't there some sort of a like step cousins, redheaded stepchild college of San Diego that people always make fun of? That's like in California somewhere.
Let's see. In San Diego, I mean, there's San Diego State, UCSD, Point Loma, Nazareth.
Is there like an Encino State or something?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's like CSU, like Channel Islands.
Yeah, and Channel Islands.
So like, it was, had I had like the full foresight, I'd be like, yeah, maybe let's do that. But like BYU was so cheap, and I was like, oh, rules. I'm cool with rules. And then I was like, oh, these fucking rules? Oh, these rules are tough. I mean, there was also ones like where like every house had to be like BYU approved, right? And so you're sitting there in a like apartment and you have 5 other roommates and you don't have like single bedrooms. And women, like if women are there, you can't close the blinds to your house, and they're not allowed in the bathrooms or bedrooms. So it's like cool stuff. I remember like talking to my dad from prison. He's like, "You have about the same amount of rules that I do."
So what happened to the girl?
Oh, we broke up.
Yeah,
we broke up. I was about to say I think we were engaged. No, I know we were engaged.
You were engaged in college at BYU?
Oh, well, that's
Keith
like
James, this story unpeels like the onion that was unpeeling at your improv show.
I know. This is So at BYU, I mean, predominantly to like get into like marital housing, to like have sex or whatever. It's kind of like the military, where people are like, I want to get out of the barracks. I'm going to marry someone.
So you got married. Like, did you get
Oh,
married?
did not. No.
Okay.
Did not get married. Basically, I was just like, oh my God.
We have to make sure this is on the record because you have
Put
a
an
current
editor
wife.
note. I want a banner running across like ESPN, like being like, he did not
get married at BYU. I repeat.
I was concerned. I will say this because I married my current wife as one to do. Yeah. Hey, you'll find sentences just like that in Greg Maxwell's Inferno. So when we were like doing our license or whatever, I was concerned because I was like, I don't know like the legalities. If we like got a marriage license, does that mean like we were married? So I was like, hey, well, like as we're like getting this license, I was like, hey, just want to let you know, like, if they find out like I'm currently married, that's a mistake. All right. And I'll rectify that. I promise. And she was like, excuse me? And I was like, yeah, remember that thing with the BYU? That may have gone through. I don't know. And she was like, yeah, okay, well. Yes.
But it turns out you were not actually married that whole time.
Wasn't married. Checked with the city of San Diego. And, yeah.
But did you check with the city of, is it Idaho?
Well, I was in Idaho, yeah. Yeah, I was in Idaho. Yeah, I didn't check with them, but we brought it into no, hold on. We brought it into San Diego. We brought that marriage to San Diego.
Okay.
We weren't going to get married in Idaho because I looked down on that state.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's fascinating, Keith. You've had a very interesting life, and that was just your college years.
Yeah, that's literally a span of like 3-4 years. Yeah.
So you graduate from college from someplace in Idaho, and then you move back to San Diego.
No, move back to San Diego. Yeah, move back to San Diego, and then I'm kind of like split into LA, San Diego, kind of stuff like that. Doing training up in LA. And then before even I went to college, I spent time up in LA too. So there was like a very big gap of my LA time. And then, man, as far as with like Greg Maxwell, like the book.
Well, you start writing, and you've written a ton of stuff. And some of the stuff, I mean, you write hilarious stuff very often for McSweeney's, which is the most popular online humor place. I would say McSweeney's is more popular than the New Yorker. New Yorker has a humor section, right? But McSweeney's is just like, hands down, like all comedy, all short form humor section type. It's a very niche voice on McSweeney's, right? Like it's everything could almost be written from this fictional person of Timothy McSweeney, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And that person, from your viewpoint, is just like totally crazy. Like, best STEM toys for 1-year-olds. Also, calm down. I'm the LL Bean catalog, and I have chosen Pete Buttigieg as my king. I am Godzilla, king of monsters, and I too was contacted by the Trump administration to investigate Hunter Biden. Like, your stuff is very clever, and it's got like teeth, and it's got this like strong narrative voice, which also is an incredibly big narrative voice for your book, Greg Maxwell's Inferno, which features a very strong, insane person. So, we can talk about your book, Greg Maxwell's Inferno, which is wonderful in bookstores now. Go to gregmaxwellsinferno.com to check it out. So tell me about where Greg Maxwell came from. And then also we can talk about your podcast, your hit podcast in season 2, Gus Biblowitz, Basketball Legend.
Yeah, so where Greg Maxwell came from. It all started from I was having a conversation with my dad right around the time I was set to get married to my current wife. I have to make that clear on this podcast now. So we were at the bar and And I was like, he was like, oh, like, you know, what do you like? You getting in shape for it or whatever? And I was like, yeah, you know, I have a personal trainer. And he's like, yeah, so what do you do? And I was like, you know, I do blah, blah, blah. And he like immediately cut me off because he had no interest in hearing what I do for a workout. He wanted to tell me his workout. And he was like, he was just started telling me, he's like, so I do 30 push-ups, open hand, 30 push-ups closed, 30 fist push-ups, 30 diamond push-ups. And I was like, you pay for a gym membership and you just do push-ups? And he was like, it's all you need. And I sat there, I was like, all right. So I'm like sitting at my desk and I'm like, all right, so let me just like, I'm just writing. And I start coming up with like a point of view of a person who like, if they believe that, then what else do they believe? And kind of with...
So Greg Maxwell is your father.
It's like loosely based on my dad. I don't want to give him that much credit. But like, I like to, even with all those stories, is because every writer has like their own bag of tricks. And for me, it's like a point of view. Just like establish a strong, clear, concise point of view, and then give that character some like walking around money, right? Let them like take them on a walk, and where do they go?
So which one of the sons in Greg's Maxwell Inferno are you?
Oh, I'm Ethan, 100%. I'm 100% Ethan. Because my dad is like a New Englander, like, you know, dyed in the wool, and, you know, like, kind of like, you know, just like a tough guy. And then my mother came from like a very like iron worker, like hard Irish background. And I was a guy who was doing like musical theater. And so like, I was just like the bane of my dad's existence. Just like, you know, like an Ethan, right? Like, just like a very soft, I was a soft man. And so my, yeah. And so, yeah, definitely to answer your question, Ethan, no doubt.
Yeah. I knew that you were Ethan.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to say it.
Yeah. I think
this book is so funny, and this book isn't just funny. This book is insane, and it's got like multi-dimensional battle of good and evil, Lucifer's champion, talking animals, soup plantation.
Yep.
Erotica, humorous erotica.
Deep erotica.
This book was number one in many categories.
Yeah.
It was number one in it was urban legends humor, absurdist humor.
Yeah.
It was top 100 for humorous erotica.
Humorous erotica, and I didn't realize how tough that category was, because I was like, oh, humorous erotica, and then I go through and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for King Dick 5, and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, we're going against King Dick. We're never gonna stop King Dick. Yeah, so it touches a strange nerve in the literary world.
When I had sent this book out, Humorous Books published this book. Humorous Books is the book publishing division of Humorist Media, which is the parent company of Weekly Humorist, which is the parent company of Talkward. And you put together development sheets that are called story reports, and they look like this. And someone reads a book, and they write out a treatment, or they write out a whole thing, and it's all about film and video, television adaptation. So this was going to people who were in the TV business, and people love your book. You know, I've gotten some feedback, and this is something I wanted to read you that I thought jumped out. You ready?
Yeah.
If adapted, this is from someone who was very enthusiastic about the story. They loved the story. If adapted, the story would need to be at least partially animated. There were many talking animals and fantasy sequences that would be impossible or expensive to produce live action. The sexual scenarios depicted in the book would need to be far less graphic, even if animated.
That person's a coward. A fucking coward.
I thought that was so funny.
Man, because I was talking to people about the Gus Biblowitz thing like animation, and they were like, "Yeah, it's got to be less gross." Yeah, you got a way of doing this thing where I just it's gross. We got to take away some of the shine.
Well, the thing about books and podcasts where you get to be the only person in the room deciding everything is you can make your thing and then you put it out there in the world, and then people who like that one thing can build an audience. But then if you want like mass market appeal, that's when everyone starts to cut things out that would upset people in a mass market. They're like, well, we couldn't actually put that in there. And that's when things get a little bit watered down. So things always will get watered down when they get made in more of a big budget thing. But people should buy this book, Greg Maxwell's Inferno, the concentrated Keith James, the non-watered down Keith James.
Straight to the...
It's got a lot of stuff. So tell me about Soup Plantation and your personal obsession with clam chowder.
Oh man, okay. So Soup Plantation meant a lot to me as like a little fat kid running around San Diego. I mean, I spoke about that place with just pure passion in my heart, and then later, I went there as an adult with my wife, and we realized how horrendous this place really was. But like, it was just every single Soup Plantation is the exact same, and they're all closed now, which is a shame, because at the time, this book was like I think when I brought it to you guys, it was still open, and then it shut down during the pandemic. And yeah,
maybe
RIP.
This book could bring them back.
Oh, I wish. I would. In my heart of hearts, I would use all this royalty money to like buy back the franchises, and then the commercials would just be like, "Come get your sloppy shit, get your dumpy, cold blueberry muffins to soak in your loose clam chowder, your warm ice cream, while we throw stale cookies at you. Your kids are just running around licking things." Yeah, so I love Soup Plantation.
It sounds like a dream.
Oh, it's really great.
And then somebody on the release of this book that highlights the love of Soup Plantation so much, and maybe this can get people to rally together to reopen the Soup Plantation. That would be a nice thing. But somebody got you a bunch of Soup Plantation stuff from a Soup Plantation. And how did they find that?
Yeah, I got this friend who, if anyone has lived a more curious life than me, it's this guy. I mean, he just has a way of getting things like that. And so he's like, "Hey, I have something to give to you, and you can't ask me where I got it, and I'm going to be over in 10 minutes. Don't come to the door. I'm just going to drop it off and give it to you." And I look, and it's just like all of this Soup Plantation stuff, like trays, soup bowls, like the cups, like the very like Soup Plantation specific cups. And he's just like, "These are yours now, but I didn't get them." And I was just like, "Thank you so much." He's like, "Don't say thank you. Don't say thank you. Don't say thank you. I didn't get them." And I was just like, my God, should I have these? But now they're like toys for my kid.
Have you actually eaten anything out of them?
I ate out of the soup bowls. We had to wash them clearly because the soup there is inedible. So
poor Soup Plantation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really kicking them while they're down.
You are.
But yeah, well, you got to treat it like shit.
Oh, so the audiobook for Greg Maxwell's Inferno is out, and people can get that now on Audible. And we have freebies to give away. So we'll do something in relation to the launching of this podcast when it's out, and people can try to get free audiobook downloads of Greg Maxwell's Inferno. And you did the narration for that book.
I did.
And it's wonderful, and it's so funny, and the way that you deliver the lines is so funny, and the way that you read Greg Maxwell is so funny. So what was it like doing that whole narration for the book, and did you learn, like, when you were rereading it, did it mean anything different to you, or did you notice parts of the book that you had maybe forgotten about, and that were funnier to you, or something like that when you were going through the reading? Because, narrating a whole book and doing all the character, that's hard.
Yeah, I was definitely not a super gifted I'm not like Game of Thrones guy. I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who does the narration for Game of Thrones. Like, I don't have like 30 voices in my back pocket. So like for some of the animals, I was like, all right, running out of voices to do.
What was your Doug voice?
My Doug voice was like, and that's what we are. Like, it was, hello, Greg. This is of utmost importance. And so, like, he was just more like a play. But then there's one rabbit in there where I just, like, blanked and I was like, that's the one! Get it! And I was just like, oh, man.
I'll make him Scottish. I'm out of stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I'm completely out. But my brother-in-law, shout out to Ben Lieberman, fantastic audio engineer. I was like, hey man, I can't cut out all the stuff, all the takes and everything. I can't do it. Please do it. And he was like, absolutely. It'd be a joy. And so he's doing it and he's like, man, I gotta say, you had some serious like Bill O'Reilly style outbursts.
I bet.
Of just like, you mother.
I just want the audiobook of the outtakes. I just want Greg Maxwell's Inferno audiobook outtakes, and it's just you screaming after you screw up the lines.
Yeah,
that'd be funny.
He sent me a clip. He sent me a bunch of these like clips of just like the dumbest things he heard. He at one point was like, you left your recording on and you clearly watched a Celtics game because I could hear you in the background. And he's like, there was no reason that one chapter should be 2 hours long. He's like, but you left the mic on and you just did that and you sent that to me. And I was like, oh shit.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. He's like, I could hear you like eating and taking phone calls. He's like, you like did not have this in order. And I was like, yeah, well, thank you for getting rid of that.
It's a learning process.
Yeah, and I'm like a notoriously bad podcast editor, like on the Gus Biblowitz thing. People be like, hey, really funny. You were watching the Celtics game. I was like, yeah, okay, you got me. I gotta stop watching those, I guess.
So let's talk about Gus Biblowitz.
Yeah.
Who is he? What's his goal in life? Why does he exist?
So Gus is, he's a NBA veteran to say the least. 29 years in the NBA. Kicked out of the league 5 times, for criminal style behavior. Recently got diagnosed with gout. Mm-hmm. Yeah, morbid. He's morbidly obese. He's 7 feet tall. But he basically is the representation. There's like all this lore around the NBA of like what happens off the court, and like there's this unspoken thing with NBA players of like what happened, and they're not going to tell reporters. So my whole thing was like, well, I'll just create a player who has no problem telling anyone anything. So he's just like goes on these horrendous, coked out binges where, he ends up buying Can Caminiti, who was a baseball player for the Padres. He ends up buying his heart and wearing it around his chest. And he like awakens the spirit of Can Caminiti. But yeah, it's just this guy going through his like last hurrah in the NBA. And if you think Greg Maxwell is a bad person, Gus is bad. Gus is an actual bad person.
So what draws you to these terrible people?
So I think
is it just fun to write terrible people?
It's fun to write terrible people, but I also think that I just find like I find really vulnerable men super funny. Because like I think if men like say their problems out loud, a lot of the time they're very stupid. Like it's kind of like with Greg Maxwell where he's like, I feel bad because I can't do as much push-ups as the other guy, and he's going to come in my house and take my family. And you're just like, it's just like, it's things like that where it's like they're so insecure.
When Greg Maxwell couldn't put in his French drain.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, that's based off a real thing.
Tell me about the French drain. Also, I don't think I ever said what Greg Maxwell's Inferno was about, so I'm going to quickly read what Greg Maxwell's Inferno is, just a quick summary. Hell has come to claim the last mortal universe. A bleeding tower has burst through the 24-hour fitness parking lot. Demons circle the city of San Diego. One name is called to challenge Lucifer's champion, Greg Maxwell. Who is Greg Maxwell? Imagine the person you would want to fight for humanity's survival. Now think of that opposite person. Now think of that person's dad. Cocaine, talking animals, weekend trips to Cape Cod, secret JFK sex videos. This is the erotic, Judeo-Christian modern-day odyssey no one asked for. This is Greg Maxwell's Inferno. Bum bum. So, now I see the connection to your dad because you put that in the line. It is your dad.
Yeah, it's like imagine a bad and then imagine that person's dad. So yeah.
So you're the first bad person.
I'm probably the first bad person.
And then your dad is the second person.
Yeah, it's like, and now imagine the person that raises bad people.
Yeah. So you're the person that nobody wants. You're the opposite. And then you're that, and Greg is that person's dad. That's interesting. Yeah. This is a very personal book now, Keith.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a memoir. It's a memoir. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. Oh yeah. So the French drain. Yeah. So our house flooded, and this is such a ridiculous story. House flooded, and I was in Italy working, and my wife was by herself, and house flooded. She was freaking out, and she started getting over people to like fix the stuff on the outside, and one of the things was a French drain. And she was like, all right, so there's 3 guys, there's this guy, but I really like this one guy, and whatever, my mom likes him too, and my wife and of course her mom are Jewish, and I was like, oh, okay, and then she like gave me the name, and I was like, oh, is he like an Israeli guy? And she was like, yeah, and I was like, huh. And so I go and I meet this guy, this Israeli guy, and he's like very tall and like buff, and he's sitting there and he's just like bullying me into a French drain. And at one point,
so there were other options that were not the French drain.
There were other options that were not the Israeli guy. But I met with him, whatever. But he's like really bullying me into a bunch of stuff. And he had such a funny way of like negotiating with me. He'd be like, oh, well, you go to, you go and you don't go with me. You go with someone else. But then your house floods and your wife, she's pregnant. She cries to you. And you cannot fix. Or so it will be. That's how it will be. And I'd be like, what? And then at one point he stops and he says, Are you Jew? And I was like, no, I'm not. He's like, but your wife is Jew. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, your baby will be Jew. And I was like, sure. And he's like, some people believe that that if a Jew marries a non-Jew, they go to hell. And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, but that's just what some people believe. And I was like, what do you need for the French drain, bud?
French drain it is. Do whatever you want.
Whatever gets me out of this conversation. Man.
How's the French drain working out?
Great. The guy put in a great French drain. Yeah. And I remember I was YouTubing how to do a French drain, and I was telling my wife, I was like, it's pretty easy, it's pretty simple. And she was like, what? Get a mirror. Get a mirror. And I was like, it's PVC pipe, 4 inches. You just go and you take a trench, whatever. It's like, I looked it up and watched a bunch of YouTubes. She's like, why don't on the next French drain, you can do the next one, but you're not doing this one.
No.
And I was just like, bear.
You're like, I'm putting that in my book.
Yeah, yeah. I'm putting that insecurity in my book.
I'm going to use this. I'm using this
I'll
content.
show you.
I'm going to turn this into content. It's going to be funny.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Did you send a book to Amir?
No, I haven't. No. Oh, I mean, he lives with us. I mean, I live in the guest bed. He's with my, so I don't need to send it. He has it.
He has since moved in and taken over my family.
Yeah,
just as you feared. Oh,
yeah.
Keith.
Yeah, well, it's a push-up contest.
And what was the kind of push-ups you said your dad did? Diamonds? Are this when you put your hands like that?
You put your hands like this. Yeah, and you just do it like that. And And he does 30 of those a day.
It's a lot.
Oh yeah.
Was he jacked?
I guess so.
I don't know.
Think so.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not jacked?
No. I couldn't do any of those push-ups. I can't do none of them.
Yeah.
But Greg Maxwell, in the beginning of the book, doesn't seem like he's in very good shape.
He's not.
But then he becomes like shredded. Yeah,
he gets a little bit more shredded. He gets beefed out from dancing at the clubs in Cape Cod, and yeah. I never really explained how he got beefed out, but I was just like, they'll know it's from the club and the cocaine,
and not eating for like 10
Yeah.
years, and just having like sex for 10. He had like a sexcapade.
He had sex
for like 10 years.
He had missionary sex for 15 years straight.
There's a part of the book that takes up about 15 years, and it's only about 2 pages long.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a quick read. People should definitely pick up this book, Greg Maxwell's Inferno. It's only like 170 pages. It's a great beach read.
It goes by really quick.
It goes by very quickly. Upcoming. What do you got? What's the next project, Keith James?
So I'm still kind of cranking out some stuff for Gus Biblowitz. I have another book in the works right now, and it's similar to Greg Maxwell.
Okay.
It's not in the universe.
Okay.
But it's similar. It's like a fantasy comedy type thing.
I like fantasy comedy. I'm seeing that as being a fun niche.
Yeah, and this one's definitely, dare I say, sweeter.
Okay.
Slightly sweeter. Yeah. Excited.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And then you're still doing lots of short form humor?
Yep, doing the stuff, with McSweeney's and everything like that. And
how often do you send stuff in? Like, how often are you working on ideas for that?
That's a good question. It goes in spurts. So, like, there will be days where I'll get, like, 6 of those stories done.
Mm-hmm.
And then there will be days, or there will be, like, full weeks where I do nothing like that. And I have to, like, focus on Gus Biblowitz or focus on some animation project I'm working on, because I also work as a creative consultant for this animation company.
That's awesome.
Writer. Yeah, so I do some writing stuff for them, and so like I'm either working on that or so it all depends. I'm definitely not a person that has like a routine, like this is my morning writing hour. I'm here now. And then I also write a bunch of stuff that like I just don't know how it goes anywhere. Like I don't know how to get it out. Like for example, I wrote an Aquaman screenplay, but like as if Maya Angelou wrote.
That could be a great, instead of what if, it's as if. For Marvel, and it's like, what if we had Spider-Man, but it was written by Mark Twain, or something like that?
But it's like, my idea was like, you gave it to Maya Angelou, and you were like, Maya, you're writing Aquaman, and she's like, say no more. It's like, do you need like a one sheet on like who Aquaman is? No. And so this whole story is just like a screenplay of just Aquaman from the perspective of Maya Angelou.
I think that could find an audience.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
It's things like that where I'm like, there's probably one guy out there who's like, need that Maya Angelou Aquaman content.
I think you could send that to someone though, and that would make you stand out, and you could get their attention and be like, here's a funny project. Just kidding. Yeah. Here's my real project.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think I did that with a lot of colleges when I was like in high school, and like my essay would be like just some bonkers thing, and I'd like send it to Harvard and be like, there you go. Like, here's a guy with like a 3.2, but like his essay was very dumb. His essay was extremely dumb.
they would love to hear what that college or that high school student ended up doing to get into BYU, lying about being a Mormon, almost getting married just so he could have sex with his girlfriend.
Yep.
And then having to leave and then getting thrown out of that college.
Yeah.
The beginning of a very long story. And here we are back at it.
Here we are.
This was fun talking to you, Keith James. I've learned a lot over this hour. I think we've all learned quite a bit. And I think we actually might be leaving this conversation with a lot more questions about you, Keith James.
Yeah, hey, bring me back on.
Those are going to have to save for the next episode. I have like a list of questions that have spurred that I can't even get into. But I'm curious to learn more and more about you. But definitely everybody needs to check out Greg Maxwell's Inferno. You can get it at Amazon or Bookshop, or you can get it at your bookstore. If you go to if they go into the bookstore and they say, I want to order this book, the bookstore can order it from the bookstore ordering place. And it's going to get featured in our Humorous Books Halloween Haha list, which is featured on bookshop.org next week. And we're going to be featured by them because they're nice to us. But you're going to be on there front and center for having a hellish related Halloween book, Greg Maxwell's Inferno. And this is Doug, the bunny on the cover of the book, and he's wearing a onesie that says Future Feminist. And we don't really know why.
Oh, do I want me to explain why?
Sure. I would love to hear why Doug is wearing a Future Feminist onesie.
As like a newborn dad, you see a lot of babies, and I just saw this baby that was wearing a Future Feminist onesie, and I was like, what a lunatic. Like, what a weird thing to put on a child. And so I just thought, I was like, it's an interesting thing to just have in the story, as far as because they're all wearing onesies and baby clothes, because they're little baby animals.
They're little animals, that talk.
Yeah, and we got a lot of those kind of those type of clothing things from people, of just weird statements. And so I started trying to buy clothes that were my dad is a welder, and if you mess with him, you mess with his 3 brothers, and just super random things that could fit on a shirt.
Also slightly threatening things to put on a baby's clothing.
Your dad may be a doctor, but dad was on a Herald team in this theater, so back off. And
my dad knows how to kick dance or kick fight, or what is it?
It was
breakdance, breakdance fighting.
Capoeira?
Is it capoeira?
Capoeira? Is that Brazilian breakdance fighting or something?
Maybe.
That's basically what he did. And he kicked me. Yeah.
Until next time. Hey, where can people find you on the interwebs, Keith James?
You can find me on Twitter at Keith James, where the E's are 3s. Same as Instagram, same thing. And then check out the Gus Biblowitz podcast. It's on Apple, Stitcher, and I believe Spotify.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on Talkward, Keith James.
This was so much fun.
You told us many awkward stories. We learned about the book. I can't wait to hear more, and I can't wait to listen to all of Gus Biblowitz, basketball legend, in its 2nd season now. And everyone can go to gregmaxwellsinferno.com to buy your new book, and also the Audible book.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Great to talk to you, Keith James. I will talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Talkward. Please subscribe, follow us, and visit weeklyhumorist.com.